Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing another Sharks player review. And next up, we have a pretty interesting player to talk about for sure, and that is Noah Gregor. Now, normally I wouldn't say he's the most interesting player on the San Jose Sharks, but the fact is that he is no longer on the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks, Mike Grier, had an opportunity to give him a qualifying offer just last week, but decided against it, and as such, Gregor became an unrestricted free agent, and in fact is still unsigned to this day. Likely signed with some NHL team at some point if I had to guess, but it is very unlikely to end up being with the San Jose Sharks. And Gregor has had a pretty interesting, albeit rather short career with the Sharks, was drafted by San Jose a few years ago, played a few years there still in the WHL, overager, eventually made the transition, had a couple of years where he didn't really play too many games, but it was really the 21-22 season, which was, I guess you could say, his breakout year, where he ends up playing just over 3/4 of the season and puts up 23 points, which is honestly not too bad, especially with the chances that he was generating for the player that he was, which is essentially just playing in that bottom six pretty consistently. And he did well enough that Mike Grier, who had come in and was immediately culling a lot of the bottom tier players for the San Jose Sharks, getting rid of Dahlin, getting rid of Balcers, getting rid of Chmelevski, decided to give a contract to Noah Gregor, which is a pretty big sort of belief sign, I guess you could say, in him. And it was an opportunity for Gregor to try and take a step forward this season, but that's not exactly what happened. And while I won't sit here and say that Gregor took a step back, I do think he kind of stagnated a bit, which is not really what Grier was looking for. If we take a look at his statistics, he played actually slightly less games than last season. So he was healthy scratched a few times under Bob Booner, and once again a few more times under David Quinn. So two different coaches feeling the exact same way about it. His point totals actually went down on the year, going from the 23 of the 21-22 season to just 17 this past season. His goal total did jump up slightly from 8 to 10, but because of the fall of his assists, he ends up at less points than last season. It should be noted that this is not for a lack of trying or a lack of chances. As we know, Noah Gregor gets a ton of chances. He's just really unable to bury them. I imagine if you were to ask any Sharks fan randomly at this point, which player on the Sharks last season had the most chances without actually scoring on them, and probably like 80% of them would say Noah Gregor, because that's just was the running joke with him so much throughout this past season, is that the games he played, he could easily get like one breakaway, if not more, per game, and yet he just wouldn't score on them that often. In fact, if we actually take a look at a specific statistic, individual high danger chances for per minute, which is basically how many high danger chances that a player get for themselves. Leading the way in that category is Timo Meier, unsurprisingly, but second place in that category amongst players who played a relevant amount of games for the Sharks, so about half the season, 41 games, Noah Gregor is actually second in that regard, saying that he gets a lot of chances for himself. And you could argue for sure that, maybe some of the chances were generated by his line mates, by Erik Karlsson frequently on the ice setting him up, but really that's not much the case. Gregor's most frequent line mates were Evgeny Svechnikov and Nico Sturm, and even when he wasn't playing with those two players, he was essentially just bouncing around the bottom six, playing with Steven Lorentz or Oscar Lindblom or Jona Gadjevich, these types of players, who are certainly not terrible, and I don't think they're necessarily so much worse than Gregor, but they're not exactly the elite playmakers that other players on the Sharks may have been playing with much more frequently. And so a lot of these chances that Gregor did get for himself were created by himself. And so with just a bit more luck in his game, he likely could have had at least 15, perhaps even up to 20 goals. And you could say, well, maybe it's not so much of an unlucky thing with Noah Gregor. Maybe he just doesn't really have that finishing touch. And that could definitely be the case here, especially since it's now 2 years in a row where this has happened. But I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world either to just give him yet another contract, because I felt as though he was at least effective enough in the bottom six and probably a better option than a couple of the players that the Sharks will be icing facing in this upcoming season. And so since he wasn't going to break the bank, I don't necessarily see the harm in extending him. But of course, that is then too late. The Sharks already decided not to give him that qualifying offer, and so while they could technically go get him in unrestricted free agency, it's highly doubtful that happens. Moving on to the plus-minus situation, actually pretty decent. Usually you take a look at a -9 and you think that's not particularly good. In fact, it's kind of bad if he was on a good team. But compared to many of the other Sharks players, once again amongst players who played at least half the season for the San Jose Sharks, Gregor actually had the 4th best plus-minus on the team. I mean, others were chilling at like -15, -20, even up to -30. And so the fact that Gregor was only at -9 is a pretty decent look and shows that at the very least he wasn't that big of a liability for the San Jose Sharks when he was on the ice. When it comes to his time on ice, he obviously didn't really play much. He very rarely got any power play time, didn't really get a ton of shorthanded ice time either, and as such, most of this comes at even strength, 12 minutes, 58 seconds, just under 13 minutes, which is pretty much in line with what you would expect for like a fringe third liner, more of a fourth liner, but maybe slightly more credibility than what a fourth liner might usually have. So when it comes to the grading, last season I gave him a C+ because I had come in with specific expectations and I felt as though he slightly overperformed those. This year I was a bit hesitant whether or not I wanted to give him a C or a C+. C being as though he met expectations and was nothing special at all. C+ being at least slightly better. And I feel as though with the amount of chances that he did get, even if he didn't actually bury on many of them, I feel as though he did deserve to yet again get the grade of a C+. Class dismissed.